So our next problem is, now that the rear end's lowered, we've got to figure out a way to get what used to be here is the pulley height from the motor to this pulley that's now underneath the rear end on this side. So let me show you what we're going to do. Alright, so, like I said, right here is where the rear end used to be, right where my hand is here. And there's an 8-inch pulley used to be right here that the belt came around this idler, and that's how it drove. Well, now that I've lowered the rear end, I've flipped it over, and the pulley's on the bottom side of the rear end here, over here. And we took measurements, and how we done that was we would hold a level directly across, and I would take a tape measure and measure down to the pulley, and that would give me roughly about 1.5 inches to the top side of the pulley from the top side of the frame. And then we would come back here and measure from the top side of the frame back to this angle, and measure off this angle to this bottom side of the pulley. After we done all of our calculations, we need 4.5 inches of drop. Just one second. This is one of the old spindles from the deck. You can see there, that's where you put the blade. This is where the top pulley mounted on that spline right there. This is 4.5 inches of drop. Like, it couldn't work out any better if I wanted it to. So I took one of these and I took out our little machine up there and machined this piece down where I could press one of the other pulleys down on this and then weld it to this flange. Then, because I welded to the flange, it's supposed to go up in the housing, we had to machine some of the housing on. All this stuff happened off camera to create this. So now I'm going to give you a close-up of what this is. So this right here is the spindle I showed you. And its star place right here, I had to machine it down to where it would fit the inner portion of one of these pulleys right here. Now this one's actually got the best amount of teeth on it as far as the fitment on the spline, so this is the good one I use for the top. So when I done that, I pressed it down on there, and you can see how some of them teeth were worn, and I just dropped that spindle. But once I pressed it down on there, I was able to weld to the back side of this. So now, that changes things a little bit, and I'll show you why. So this is the other spindle. And the problem is that when you press one of the bearings down in there, this was supposed to go in there and be flush with the face of it, like that. And that's how it mounted underneath the deck. So when you looked underneath the deck where you mounted your blade, that's what you seen right there. It was flush. Well, the problem is I welded the edges of it. So when I stick that in there, it no longer can be flush. So I took this one and took it up there and machined 1/4 inch off of it. Now, I say machine. Could you have done that with a cutoff wheel? Yeah. But we have a little mini lathe up there, so I done that. So when I set this up in there now, everything lines up, that goes down on there, and my weld can turn freely without hitting anything. Now, on the top side, I got my bearings. On the inside, I got 2 sleeves. These were all parts that came out of the spindle originally. And then on the top side, I've got my pulley. And then I'm going to use one of these covers that came off the deck originally. Oh, I can't do that. Sorry, I forgot a piece. My bad. I got to set that down there. Then put that on. I don't think that's right either. Boy, I'm having a ton. That's a little thick. But anyways, the idea is I'm going to be able to take this nut, put down on there, and then tie all that together like I held it a second ago when I didn't have the guide on it. I may not even use that. But what that gives us is that gives us a jack shaft now, which has a housing that turns, so I can drive one side with the motor and drive the other side to the rear end. So now, once I get this put together, we got to figure out how to mount it in the frame to get everything lined up, and we'll go over that. You guys hear that sound? That's some sanding going on of some rims we're going to use, and that's going to be a whole nother video because we ran into a problem. But I'm going to show you the I've been working some without being on camera, so I'll show you the jack shaft I built. So you guys seen building of this right here. My measurement was off, and I took another pulley and welded the top of it. And as you can see, when I turn it, we're moving forward. So that's working. I built this bracket work out of some angle. Most of the junk we're building is I'm using scrap up on the basket up there in the welding bench, trying not to use any larger stuff, just to try to use our scrap up. And so obviously for this I had to use some longer stuff to get them right, but trying to use as much junk and reuse parts as we can, try and keep this project as cheap as we can for the most part. We're splurging a few places, but so I got the jack shaft on it. So I'm going to flip the mower up and show you what is on the underneath side by putting it on its side. So right here you can see where the bolts go through into that aluminum housing that was mounted to the deck previously. And then it comes up here, and I've got these pieces of angle bolted to the original bracket where the rear end was mounted. And so that should actually keep this pulley to where it's about where it was before, and because of how I've made this, it's a little further back. We may or may not be able to use the original belt. And so this pulley here was one of the deck pulleys, and this nut comes off, this pulley comes off. I can pull the other two pulleys up through, and I can replace the bearings in this housing, so it is all still serviceable to repair if I need to replace bearings. And then this right here was a tensioner off the deck, and I've got a spring that I drilled a hole down in this piece of angle iron here. And so that right there, well actually this is an old belt we had laying around here at the garage. So we'll use this one for the time being. Try and use as much stuff as we have without buying new. And as you can see, that works pretty good. These right here are mostly around the pulleys, and I went to a 4-inch pulley on the original rear end from an 8-inch. And then it's got a, let me spin it around here. You'll see there it's got a set screw like the original one did, and that's all the original one had. And I've also put this nut on there, which don't have very many threads on it, but I don't have it really tight either. And I think there's still some play down in there, so I may try and tighten that up a little bit more later on, loosen this, but we'll put some Loctite on that. So there it is. There's the jack shaft and the tensioner on the bottom. So aside from finding the right size belt, and of course over here, this is your original pedal to the original pulley that is spring tension that moves to give you your clutching. And then I made this piece right here, which you can't really see from that angle. Made that piece right there, which is a duplicate of that. And this right here goes in that, actually right up here. But I don't have it pinned or washered in yet, although I'm trying to look at what I'm doing and not showing it on camera. But yes, that goes in there. And so that right there I extended, and I welded pieces on it for strength where I extended it, because it is a brake one. And I got to rebuild this brake mechanism back here, but all of that works now. So, brakes are done, clutch is done, which the clutch we didn't change very much. Jack shaft's done, tensioner's done, so drivetrain wise we're pretty much done, with the exceptions of I have to design something for the shifter here so we can shift gears. And I'm going to make something here that's going to protect this pulley from if he runs over dirt clods or whatever, or rocks and hits that pulley. I don't want to hit the pulley, I'd rather have a shield. And whatever I make there will protect the rear pulley. So, jack shaft and rear tensioner's done. We are driving and we are doing everything we need to do now as far as from the engine goes. So I'm almost point that I can mount the engine back on the front and see if that belt fits. But first I want to work on the body and the steering shaft and stuff, and that's a different video along with what we're doing with the rear wheels. And if you hear, you can still hear somebody sanding and somebody sitting over there and being lazy. So we'll see you guys on the next one.